You ready? Ready. All right, well, thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to make an announcement about the Recovery Act. I think it's $1.9 trillion recovery, which Cleveland received a portion of that as our allocation. Now, I just want to start by saying that we have not got the money yet. It's on its way, they tell us, but we haven't gotten it. The amount was $541 million. We were notified, I believe, earlier this week that that amount had changed to around $511 million, and that we're still working on understanding what the eligibility requirements are. We did get passed through council this past money legislation that allowed for us to apply for and accept money, and in some cases expend the dollars, and then other cases we will have to go back to council, particularly on the programmatic side, on the expenditure side. Now, this is a lot of money. I think it covers about 2.5 years, and it's one-time money, however. It's not a continuing revenue stream. So with that in mind, what we are attempting to do is to develop a strategy as to how to use this money to better ensure Cleveland's success and position us for the future. And we're looking at it with three strategic goals in mind. And the first one, and they all have, there's none more, one is not more important than the other. They all must work in tandem in order for us to be successful. And that is, number one is looking at our budgetary stability, our financial stability, as this money, as we believe it will do, will allow us to recover the cost that we have incurred for a period of time in dealing with the pandemic, as well as lost revenues. Department of Finance and our budget people are looking at that to determine what exactly that amount will be. And we're going to be using this source of revenue to deal with prior expenses and also lost revenues that are currently being lost. And as we work through the year, this year, those projected revenues that will be lost. The second part of this is that we're looking to do economic recovery, particularly with small, medium-sized business that have been negatively impacted by the pandemic, and having economic recovery as a result of these dollars, and investing these dollars strategically to help those businesses that have been impacted, but also to ensure in a general sense that Cleveland has economic recovery, and to position Cleveland for the future. That's important because, as I said, this is one-time money, and it will plug some financial budgetary gaps for us. But if we don't create a continuing revenue stream that will fill that gap, when the money is gone, we will result with huge deficits, which will not be good for Cleveland in terms of the government, but it will also not be good for the economy in general. And then finally, but just as important, is that we want to make sure that, as I mentioned, that we're able to sustain whatever it is that we've done, meaning that whenever the one-time money is gone, that Cleveland is able to sustain whatever initiatives that we've begun, and to sustain the market values that have been created, and to sustain the investments that will be occurring throughout the city of Cleveland. What we don't want to happen is for the money to be gone, and then when the money is gone, all of a sudden we go back to what is previously being done, where there are parts of the city where you cannot get investment dollars, no development dollars. We want to have a better outcome for all of Cleveland and Clevelanders by the strategic investment of this money and leveraging that investment with investments of the private sector as they also invest in recovery of Cleveland. And in that sense, investing in that recovery is an investment in the recovery of this region. And as you know, our theme is that we measure whether or not we're successful in all this as to whether or not we have created prosperity and quality of life that all can share in. Now, this is, again, dollars that we will be leveraging. And we will be entering into conversation and hopefully productive partnerships with our private sector partners to develop tools that will allow us to make the kind of investments that we need to make, not only for us to have continued revenue for our budget and financial stability, but also to ensure recovery and ongoing recovery after this one-time money is gone, and to allow for all to participate in the prosperity that we have created. So people will talk to you today about this. Now, we've had at least 5 meetings that I've participated in, even though we don't have the money. We've had about 5 meetings that I've participated in. So we've been working diligently to come up with some these strategies to develop tools and to look at how we can leverage these dollars and have it with private sector dollars and private sector tools to ensure and position Cleveland's future. So I will turn it over to Director Collier, who will kind of help connect the dots, because what we've done things and in the past. We are currently in the process of doing things. These dollars will help to strengthen those things that we've done, the things that we're planning to do, and we're connecting all of these dots. And as we'll talk about later, just mention later, is that there's another bill in Congress around infrastructure, the jobs bill. If that passes and we get our share of that, we do have projects that we have on the table that and we'll be supporting as a city that will really enhance not only what we've done, what we're currently doing, but also will make the monies that we have now in the recovery investments be more effective to ensure, again, budgetary soundness, recovery, position for the future, and that all share in prosperity and quality of life. Director Carter.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone out there listening. As the Mayor alluded to, our focus is about people, and many of the strategies and approaches that you're going to hear today is people-centered. And when we talk about being people-centered, we're talking about ensuring that people have the access to the resources, the amenities, and the opportunities that they need to thrive in the 21st century. I'm going to begin with you by reiterating some of the key points that the Mayor mentioned, so that you keep this front and center in your mind as we go through the different strategies that you're going to hear about from myself and many of my colleagues. First and foremost, restoring the lost revenues that have been lost during COVID-19 and making sure that the city remains financially solvent. Relief. We know that neighborhoods have suffered due to a lack of investment prior to COVID, and COVID has only exacerbated many of the issues that communities have faced throughout our city. Third, repositioning, making sure that we utilize this one-time allocation, as the Mayor alluded to leverage resources that will help sustain and reposition our neighborhoods and the broader community. So a combination of people-centered strategies with place-based strategies will create the type of Cleveland that we all hope to reach for in the future. I want to start by giving you some context about where we began and how we intend to continue to regenerate our city, building off of urban core communities. When we talk about Cleveland and its successes, we often talk about these key areas. Our downtown, which prior to COVID has continued to grow in population and is one of the larger population growths of a downtown throughout the country amongst many cities. We talk about $200 million that had been invested in the Euclid corridor that spawned over $1 billion of investment activity. We also talk about the opportunities that we have to leverage our greatest asset, which is our water and riverfronts. So investment along our 8-mile stretch of waterfront has been a hallmark for us as an administration. The investments in the West Shoreway project, the investments that you've seen in the downtown waterfront, and much of what you're going to hear about in the future with the downtown connector, connecting downtown to the actual lakefront. And also efforts that we're going to be pursuing to enhance our eastern waterfront. In addition to that, investments in the Flats East Bank and other planned improvements along the Cuyahoga River Valley, as well as $331 million that has been invested into the Opportunity Corridor. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about two major regional assets in the city of Cleveland. That is our arts, eds, meds, activities, and University Circle, and the billions of dollars that has been invested within a 1-mile radius of University Circle. You also hear about the master plan that Cleveland Hopkins Airport is pursuing to take advantage of our airport as a regional asset and enhance this as an opportunity as we come out of COVID. Now, what's important to understand is that these place-based investments have to be reinforced by significant investment that is intentional and that's going to create access to the opportunities that exist in neighborhoods within our target zones. Our first areas that we've targeted as part of the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative flank where many of the private, corporate, and philanthropic investments have been made in the areas in the red that you see on this map. Our agenda around opportunity and equity really helps us to focus our resources on neighborhoods that flank these investment zones. These are areas of opportunity that, if invested in properly, with the principle of equity at the forefront, we see these communities benefiting and growing, and opportunities for residents in these areas to experience a much higher degree of quality of life. But we don't just stop there. Our focus has also been on neighborhoods that are at the fringes of the city. Many of these neighborhoods have been stable for many years, but due to the conditions that have existed and the events of the past year, these neighborhoods can teeter either up or down. Part of our strategy is going to be focused on investments utilizing these resources to ensure that these neighborhoods don't tilt in the wrong direction. With respect to infrastructure, which is a key component of the work that we've done so far, I would like to outline some of the investments that have been made that we have to continue to build off on. We have to continue to layer on and double down on the activities that we have already made our investments in. The $200 million Euclid corridor investment I talked about, the $331 million investment that we've put into Opportunity Corridor, the Buckeye Road corridor, which we're investing $5.7 million in currently. And this is before any money from the federal government. The East 79th Street Woodland Chester corridor, $3.4 million. Clark Avenue from Lorraine to West 41st Street, $7.9 million. Circle North, $984,000. Clark Avenue from 41st to Quigley, another $7.4 million. And with respect to our commitment to East Side neighborhoods and creating stability in those East Side neighborhoods, in the last decade, over $65 million in public resources has been invested along the East 93rd, East 105th Street corridor. And the West 25th Street corridor is also a key component of where we see ourselves trending in the future to make sure that our commercial corridors are viable. Some of the catalytic neighborhood projects that we are already invested in include Central Villa 25, which is in the Clark Fulton neighborhood, Fairfax Innovation District in the New Economy neighborhood, supporting our existing businesses along Opportunity corridors such as Orlando Baking Company, and also the establishment of the Construction Institute, which focuses on people and human capital development. The Warren and Swayze Rehabilitation Project, and also the Woodland Hills Estates, where we are potential recipients of a $35 million HUD allocation. And we are one of 5 finalist cities to potentially get those resources, as well as the investment that's happening right now in transit-oriented development on the Buckeye Corridor with the Shaker Boulevard TOD. Now, we've demonstrated success as we begin to start out our journey with investing in urban core communities. We've linked these communities to core development areas. And we've done that through economic opportunity, through physical development, through new tools and programs. But what's most important about how we approach this work moving forward is how we align strategically with our partners, working together to double down in the same geographies in order to turn neighborhoods faster. That approach that we took leveraged new tools and programs. And this kit of tools is what we've applied in areas such as Glenville in order to see significant transformation. They include demolition, entrepreneurship, capital investments, vacant home rehabilitation, critical home repair, technology, mixed-use development, and many others that we have in our arsenal. We want to use these resources to deploy them through these mechanisms and strategically focus on neighborhood target areas, meeting those communities where they are. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brianna Butler, to talk to you about some of those specific successes in the Glenville community and the demographic transformation that it has created as a result of the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative.
Great, thank you, Director Collier. So as Director Collier identified, we used a suite of tools in Glenville to restore the values of the neighborhood and attract private investment. These tools focused around investments in infrastructure, mixed-use development, new housing construction, vacant home rehabilitation, and home repairs. These investments resulted in 290 demolitions, 14,000 square feet of new retail space for small businesses and entrepreneurs, 70 new housing units, which was a mix of new apartments, new construction housing, and vacant home rehabilitations, and 40 seniors' homes received services as far as repairs. So what was the impact of our investment? From 2014 to 2019, we saw an increase in households even with the amount of demolitions that took place. Working age populations increased, income increased, owner-occupied housing increased, and the number of vacant housing units decreased significantly. So we talked about the investments made through the Neighborhood Transformation Initiative and what we've seen worked. Now I'm going to turn it over to Director Wackers to discuss the Middle Neighborhoods approach. And this still strategically invests in our neighborhoods, but focuses on a different group of neighborhoods.
Thank you, Brianna. Good morning. My name is McKeel Wackers. I'm Director of Community Development for the City of Cleveland. In addition to the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative areas, we will begin to strategically focus on areas designated as middle neighborhoods. Middle neighborhoods are neighborhoods that are too strong to be supported by traditional federally funded programs, such as community development block grants, but too weak to attract private market investment. These areas have high ownership levels, low foreclosure rates, and in most areas, low vacancies. These areas are also marked by aging population and aging housing stock, and cannot be relied for continued stability in the long run. In being strategic, we must make sure that these strengths of these neighborhoods are maintained, supported, and improved upon. This will be an opportunity to invest in these areas where limited resources will stabilize the market and prosper into the future. I'll now transition to Director Donald to talk about demolition.
Demolition is commonly an activity that's known to eliminate vacant, abandoned, and nuisance structures, and that is correct. Since 2006, we've raised over 12,000 properties and invested over $100 million in demolition in the city, with a variety of focuses throughout the city. Demolition not only reduces blight, but it aids in stabilizing our middle neighborhoods, recovery in areas that have long been disinvested from redlining days to present, and helps position neighborhoods for future development by leveraging vacant land for new housing, commercial development, and green space. Demolition has the ability to increase property value of adjacent properties, decrease nuisance properties, decrease public safety issues, and put millions of dollars back into the community through our small contractor rotation program. This map demonstrates our focus in the past with raised structures and vacant land since 2017 in purple, and the impact that concentrated demolitions will have in our middle neighborhoods, Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative areas, and other focus areas. Just as demonstrated in the Circle North neighborhood by Brianna as part of the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative, target demolitions are the catalyst to aid stabilization, recovery, and positioning our neighborhoods for the future. We aim to target approximately 750 blighted buildings and utilize 750 vacant parcels. Director Wackers will now speak to the partnerships to realize this meaningful impact in the future.
Thank you, Director Donald. So after people, housing is the most important asset of any neighborhood. Ensuring that neighborhoods have safe and quality housing, as well as housing that meets the diversity that reflects the community, are priorities. The ultimate goal is to create a market that will be sustained without subsidy after the recovery. Furthermore, our goal here is to use the tools that we know work and that have shown their ability to create change. These tools will be explained further by my colleagues. Additionally, what's very important, that there's a challenge here to expand these tools across the city and to scale them to have meaningful impact. In order to scale these across the city, we need partnerships, and partnerships that look different than we are used to. These partnerships are not just about committing funds and capacity, but also about how they are deployed and how they are integrated with city teams working on these challenges. Our partners need to invest in the recovery of Cleveland. And when everybody contributes to achieving prosperity, everyone will participate in that prosperity. And on the slides, you can see we've laid out goals that will allow for meaningful change in our focus areas, the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative areas, as well as the middle neighborhoods we've identified. But in order to do that, we need a variety of tools that partners can participate in and help bring us to these goals. All right. To speak more on the tools, I'll now transition over to Brianna Butler.
Thank you, Director. So the strategies and tools that I'm going to be discussing build off of successes that we've had in the past, and again, what we've seen work. So again, when target demolition occurs, it sets the stage for development opportunities. When demolition occurs in residential areas and next to homes, this provides great opportunities for new homes. New housing construction increases the access for home buyers to access new homes, but it also improves the confidence in the housing market. The strategy that we want to use here is construction of both single family and multifamily housing. And we don't just want to focus on market rate development, we also want to support and encourage affordable options as well, because this promotes mixed income communities. So when we increase the housing opportunities, we also need to increase access to home ownership. We want to make sure that these opportunities are accessible to all residents. That means that we need to reduce the barriers that prevent people from owning a home. The problems that we see in our at-risk and underserved neighborhoods are that mortgage programs are not accessible. There's often a lack of cash or savings to use as down payment, and often residents aren't able to afford their monthly mortgage payments. The strategy that we want to use here is to attract private lending institutions to provide mortgages in our underserved and at-risk neighborhoods. We're looking at providing loans that are offered as little as $50,000, that have fixed interest rates, and that provide down payment assistance opportunities. We also want to help eliminate the requirement for primary mortgage insurance. So next, I'm going to shift to opportunities around existing homes. Many residents are faced with prioritizing other needs over their home repairs, especially during this pandemic. That continuous lack of attention to home repairs poses a health and safety risk to both the children and adults that live in that home. So our goal here is to ensure that existing residents can benefit from the investments that are going on in their neighborhood, but also can afford to remain in their home safely. The strategy that we want to use here is to administer health and safety repairs to homes and assess the other needs that may be occurring in the family. Seniors will be targeted and prioritized for programming resources. They will receive repairs at no cost, as well as connection to resources to help them lower their property taxes as well as utility bills. Non-seniors will have access to low and/or no interest loans to complete health and safety repairs on their homes. The last opportunity around housing is around vacant home rehabilitation. There are homes that have been abandoned. But we don't want to demolish them because they're good candidates for rehabilitation. We want to increase the housing stock that is accessible to all residents by reutilizing vacant homes and abandoned homes. Additionally, there is a lower construction cost associated with rehabilitation versus new construction, and that can result in reduced home sales price. The strategy that we want to use here are to acquire these vacant homes and again, attract the private lending institutions to provide these mortgages. Once we acquire the homes through our nonprofit and for-profit partners, we will help build the capacity of local and minority contractors to complete the rehabilitation work. And again, as far as the mortgage loan programs, we're looking at the fixed interest rates, down payment assistance opportunities, and the elimination of the primary mortgage insurance. Our next step is to have conversation with our private partners to develop the best tools to accomplish this. Now I'm going to turn it over to Director Ebersole, who will discuss the opportunities for investment around entrepreneurship and our commercial corridors.
Thank you. So, our efforts are focused on the tools that are going to help support the recovery of our business community and position our economy for the future. Our proposal looks to partner with the private sector to jointly invest in the economic recovery of Cleveland. Many of our small businesses were able to survive the pandemic. However, for a true recovery, we need to focus not just on restoring their business, but allowing those small businesses to recover the losses they invested in the business over the past year and be in a position to stabilize and invest in their business going forward. Business closures have left vacancies in our commercial storefronts that we want to work together with them to repopulate and replace with long-term operators who will plant roots and grow, stabilizing our community. Most importantly, these investments need to be sustainable, improving the quality of life for our businesses and residents beyond the deployment of those funds. As such, we've worked on the following tools to help assist the redevelopment of our economy going forward. The field of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship and small businesses play a key role in Cleveland's small business and economic fabric. Small contractors provide critical support for construction and development. We want to help these businesses access the infrastructure and capital to cause stability and growth. To address these challenges, we propose to work with existing small business organizations to help expand outreach to small businesses, especially those that are hardest to reach. Work to break down silos and better coordinate our services across boundaries of organizations, and provide that personalized service to businesses to help stabilize and organize for future growth. For our small contractors, we want to use our purchasing power to create more opportunity for those contractors and small businesses to provide services and supplies to our large institutions. The city has an existing small contractor rotation program. We would look to work with the private sector to expand that program, both public and the private sector, and partner with financial institutions to use the power of our purchasing to support low-cost capital access to small businesses who are supported by these contracts. In the field of physical development, we know that investing in small businesses and entrepreneurship can only go so far if we don't have quality storefronts and commercial space to house businesses as they grow. The city's approach will revitalize our neighborhood corridors and support the catalytic investment by returning vacant land and buildings to marketability, identify new opportunities for development, and support small businesses as they prepare to move into these new spaces. Our proposal would target these funding to investment in the acquisition of vacant lands and buildings to support remediation, white box, and restore them to market-ready condition. Partner with investors and financial institutions to provide lending and equity to support this revitalization and increase the opportunity for more participants in the field of real estate development. Additionally, we want to work with commercial tenants. We want to support investments to help keep commercial rents accessible for neighborhood retail businesses, increase access to loans and investment for small businesses and entrepreneurs to help them once again support their growth and their operations going forward. Conclusion, our plan for ARP funding calls for private and public partners to join us in investing in Cleveland in order to help restore the position of our economy, especially for the small businesses impacted by the pandemic, to spend locally, increase opportunities for local contractors and suppliers, create new partnerships for supporting entrepreneurship and development in underinvested communities, and look to the future of the Cleveland economy, making our people better off and improving the quality of life, leveraging new infrastructure with catalytic investments in innovation opportunities and restoration of vacant land, creation of new jobs and support of small business startups, and creating sustainable, continuing economic growth and revenue that lasts beyond this investment. To talk about one of the key investments we're going to make in technology, I will turn it back to Director Collier.
And thank you, Director Eversole. One of the most key things that we've learned through COVID-19 is we've been taught a lesson about equity. And one of the areas that has exposed us most is the issue of technology and a lack of access to the internet by segments of our population. And what we want to do with these resources is create opportunities for residents and businesses to thrive in the 21st century. And that will require them to have access to the tools that they need to compete. We know that creating digital access by connecting the unconnected in our city, where they live, will help impact them from an educational standpoint, a health standpoint, as well as create economic development and entrepreneurship opportunities. When we look across our city, we see a divide with respect to digital connectedness. And there's a population out there who cannot gain access to the internet through traditional means, either because they lack the resources to pay for internet service or the lack of infrastructure that can deliver the service to them. One of the things that we seek to do with strategic partners is to connect 40,000 plus households to the internet, working with partners like the Digital Equity Coalition Partnership, working in tandem with organizations, both public and nonprofit like Digital C, to scale existing efforts that have some proven efficacy that they actually work. We also seek to identify partners such as Everstream to help us on the business side of the house, making sure that our businesses can compete in the 21st century arena by having virtual space in which to conduct business and to tap into markets. Fortunately, we're not alone in this endeavor. There are a number of organizations across the city that have a shared commitment to the delivery of broadband access. CMHA, Cuyahoga County, Metro Health, and many other partners have devoted resources, time to making sure that we have the right assets we need in order to begin that process of closing the digital divide gap. But one of the key components of making sure, and the most costly of all of this associated with the technology piece, is making sure that we have the infrastructure to deliver the services that individuals need. And I would be remiss if I did not highlight the fact that although you heard today about many of the people-centric strategies, we will also be discussing later a focus on strategic infrastructure and investments that will actually help to stabilize and create economic opportunity for the future of our city. I'm going to turn it over now to Mayor Jackson.
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you get the overall gist of what we're trying to communicate, is that we're going to take advantage of strategically investing $511 million in a way that allows Cleveland to recover financially and budgetarily and economically, and to position us for the future in a way that we will be able to sustain whatever progress has been made by allowing the market to take over once the one-time money is gone. And in doing that, investing it in such a way that everyone can share in that prosperity, in that quality of life. It is something that we have put together. We will be having a conversation with our private sector partners and stakeholders, and we'll be working with them. As you can see, this is about Cleveland specific, Cleveland neighborhoods specific, but we also know that there are a broader economic kind of things that are going on that we need to stay focused on, that we will be discussing with our private sector partners, such as in helping position for the future, the restoration and the bringing back of our hospitality industry, our lakefront development strategy, the connectivity of all these things, as was mentioned with the jobs bill, the transport infrastructure and transportation bill that we expect to come through. We don't know how much, but we have projects lined up, and we believe that those projects will allow us to help connect these dots even better and better position us for stabilizing and recovering. Again, this is about how do we strategically invest $511 million to stabilize the city of Cleveland in terms of our budget, in terms of our economy, and position us for recovery and for the future in a way that we will be better off than we were before we went into the pandemic. And in that better offness, we will ensure that our neighborhoods are, neighborhoods that are at risk and that are problematic will be stabilized and brought up, and the market will take over. Those neighborhoods, like the middle neighborhoods, will be continue to be stable and improve. Those neighborhoods that are doing well, such as trendy neighborhoods or neighborhoods that are pretty solid, that they will ensure their stability. All of this is about the future of the city of Cleveland and how do we strategically invest this money to guarantee their future. So we will open it up for questions, and if we're not clear on something, then just raise the question and we will try to make it clear to you. Any questions? No questions. There will be questions. Somebody will call me or call us later on and ask us what we said. So why don't you do it now? We'll wait a little bit. While we're waiting, let me point out one of the things that was, I hope we made clear, is that the city of Cleveland was making strategic investments all along. And when Director Collier showed you that map and he showed you the red area, those are areas where we're have strategic plans and strategic investments already made. And the green area was the Mayor's Transformation Neighborhood Initiative, and on the near west side, and in Glenville, that's money that that was already allocated and investments made. The middle neighborhoods, the yellow on the map, are neighborhoods that are stable, but we know that if we don't undergird them in the way that we need to, that they will tend to deteriorate, and we don't want that to happen. And so there's a strategy associated with that. And as we're developing the tools, these tools are specific to the neighborhoods depending on what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what the market will bear there. So we'll work with our private sector partners to come up with the best tools to use in these specific neighborhoods. Now, there's no neighborhood that is left out of this plan, because whatever tools we develop can be utilized throughout the city of Cleveland. And we will be working with our private sector partners to better develop tools so that they can invest in Cleveland's recovery. And at the same time, ensure that when this money is gone in a couple of years, that not only are we able to restore that one-time revenue with continuing revenue stream, but we'll be even more prosperous in all we're sharing there.
We have several questions.
And now the questions are coming.
Nick Stell at WCP and Idea Stream.
Right.
How much of this money will go to budget stabilization and making up for lost revenue?
The question is how much will go to budget stabilization and make up for lost revenues. We're working on that. It's not a small amount. It's probably tens of millions of dollars, because as you remember last year, just on the expense side, we lost $90 million in expenses, where we had $90 million worth of expenses, but we were able to use, I think they called it the CARES dollar back then, and cover 60 million of that. But that did not make up for lost revenues. It was just about expenses. So if I'm not mistaken, I'll talk to my finance people, but they've changed the formula a little bit. They said they could use in the beginning 2019 as the baseline to measure these things. Now that what they want us to do is to go back 3 years and take the average of those 3 years and use that as a baseline, or you could use a certain percentage, 4-point-something% of something in order to establish that baseline. So they're now recalculating all of that, but it will be a large sum of money. And again, it will cover the cost of our the cost we've borne for dealing with the pandemic, and the lost revenues that we have, and also we'll be looking at anticipated lost revenues, particularly if there's some legislative things going on in Columbus that around work at home, and whether or not that's retroactive and all that. So a lot of these factors come into play, but it will be a large sum of money.
Bob Hicks from Cleveland Plain Dealer asks, have you presented this to City Council yet, and what role will they have?
No, we have not presented it to City Council yet. And what we did present to City Council was the legislation. and they passed legislation allowing us to apply for and accept the money and to, in some cases, expend, but in the program side, that we'd have to go back to council for approval of the appropriation for the programming. So in that way, we will be laying out the specific programs as we move forward and with legislation to appropriate money for council to allow us to appropriate the money from the 511 million to move forward with the initiative. We will be working with our private sector partners to see what is their investment in recovery and how they intend to invest in recovery and what tools they will work in tandem with the tools that we've had in order to help facilitate that recovery. So at that point, when we go before council, we will have a much clearer, detailed picture of what it is we specifically we're going to spend this money on, how much is going to be in that particular initiative, and what portion of that is public money and what portion of that is private money.
Kim Palmer from Crane. When will you release a detailed spending account regarding the American Recovery Funds?
We'll release a detailed spending once we understand what that is. What you have now is our general approach to this as to how our strategy in moving forward. We have some detailed information around different things in regards to housing and stuff like that, but we have to talk to our private sector partners to see, again, what is their investment in Cleveland's recovery, which will ultimately result in the region's recovery, and then what tools they will be working with us on. And then we'll present a detail, not just to you and the public, but we will be presenting it to council in order for them to appropriate the dollars for us to be able to move forward. But we're not at that detail. We have some notions, but it is not fully vetted out because there's still a lot of work to be done. You have to remember now, we haven't received the money yet. We're just planning, we're just strategizing, and we just moving in a direction. And what we're sharing with you is the general notion as to how our strategy on stabilizing and investing in recovery and positioning for the future.
Okay, Nick Castell asked from WCPN, it sounds like a part of this money is going to support the neighborhood transformation plan over and above the $100 million passed several years ago. What does this extra federal money allow the city to do that you could not do before?
The question is, it sounds like we're using this money to add additional money into the neighborhood transformation plan. And what does this money do that the other money wouldn't do? First of all, it wasn't $100 million. It was $25 million, and which leveraged, I think, around $40 to $50 million of private sector investment. So we worked out that partnership with them. This money is, when I described it and we described it, we talked about areas where we had already invested. The Neighborhood Transformation Initiative was one of those areas we had already invested $25 million and along with the private sector invested in 45. Now, these tools that we use there that we found successful, we're trying to replicate them in areas where we know that since they were successful here in an at-risk neighborhood, they would be successful over here in a middle neighborhood area. So would some of the money go into those same areas? Probably so, because there are people who would wind up and businesses who will wind up being eligible for it. It's the same way as probably some of it will go downtown, as we've already invested in helping restaurants and other small businesses move through, try to move through and sustain themselves through the pandemic. Now we're going to help them recover. So there are people who've already accessed money that will probably have access to this if, in fact, there's they're eligible for it and they meet some of this strategy.
Mayor Marilyn Henderson has a question. If you receive any of the monies, is there a certain period that you would have to stay in that house?
The question is, if you read, I'm assuming this is someone who's saying they're getting money in order to be a homeowner. And if they receive money to help them be a homeowner, is there a period of time they'd have to stay in the house? And we would probably come up with some conditions for the money. If it's particularly if there are second mortgages part of it, and if there's a help on a second mortgage to help drive down, bring down the cost of new construction, a certain amount of money, they're probably over a period of time what is owed back to the city in terms of that second mortgage will decrease as the person stays in there longer and longer. And then after a certain period of time, then if they sell the house, then that second mortgage doesn't have to be paid back to the city. But if they sell within a certain period of time, then there is a return, a prorated return that we would expect on that. On the rehab side, I don't know. I have to check with community development and our people there to see if there are conditions associated with that. But if you're receiving government money, there are usually conditions attached to it in terms of you're staying in the house for a period of time if you don't want to have to pay back all or a portion of the money.
Mayor, that's the end of it.
That's the end of it. I'm gonna give you a few more seconds just in case somebody else has a question. Well, I thank you for tuning in, and we'll continue to work on this, and we will continue to come up with what is the best strategy and the best allocation of resources so that we can, again, stabilize ourselves financially and budgetarily, position businesses for recovery, position the city for the future, and as we're doing that, ensure that everyone can participate in that quality of life and prosperity. So thank you very much.